Hi, and welcome to our virtual gardening program. My name is Diane Jaroch, and I'm the Assistant Director and Adult Services Librarian at the Irvin L. Young Memorial Library in Whitewater, Wisconsin. Today we're going to be talking about apples. It's that time of year, the weather's cooler, and there are apple orchards open, so it's the perfect time of year to get out and pick some apples or to buy apples already picked. There are so many delicious varieties out there that you will be able to find whatever you're looking for. Today I'm working with two different kinds of apples. We're working today with the Granny Smith, which are green, and with Cortland apples, which are red and are sweet. It's a little sweeter. The Granny Smiths are a little tartar. The Cortlands are a little sweeter. It's really a preference as to which apple that you like, so it doesn't matter what apples you use for the recipes today. Whatever you have on hand will work fine. I've got 3 different recipes. First off, we'll get started. I'm going to wash my hands. Always a good thing to do before you start cooking. The 3 recipes today that we're going to do are baked apples, apple crisp, and then a little novelty apple snack that would be really fun for kids. Let's start off first with the baked apples. Baked apples make a great quick dessert. If you don't have anything on hand for dessert, but you have apples, you can throw together a quick little sweet dessert. And if you have a little ice cream, vanilla ice cream to go with it, that even makes the dessert sweeter. So here's our recipe for the baked apples. You want 4 large, good baking apples. Some of the ones they recommend are the Granny Smith, Cortland, Rome Beauty, Golden Delicious, or Jonna Gold. 4 good baking apples, 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 cup of raisins, you can also use currants, a tablespoon of butter. If you wish, you can also add 1/4 cup of pecans or walnuts to the recipe. Okay, I'm going to get the apples out of our way and get the filling ready to mix up. I've got my brown sugar. We need 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Add that to my bowl. I've got my 1/4 cup of raisins, and you can chop the raisins up if you want, but you don't have to. I did not. And then our cinnamon. We just need a teaspoon of cinnamon. So I've got all 3 ingredients. I've got the cinnamon, I've got the brown sugar, and I've got the raisins. And again, that's 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of raisins, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. And you just mix that up well. It then calls for a tablespoon of butter. And you take the tablespoon of butter and cut it into 4ths because we're going to put that on the very top. That's mixed up pretty well. I'm going to just use my fingers to get it worked in there a little better. Smells wonderful, that cinnamon. Oh, and it's gonna smell really good when it's baking in the oven. So we've got that ready to go. Let's get our apples up here. And now all you need to do is to fill the apples. I'm going to hold one and I'm going to use my hands just because that will work really well. And then that way anything that falls over can go right into my bowl. Got my apple. And I'm just stuffing it, and you can push it down pretty well. There we've got 1 stuffed apple, and we're just going to do that for all 4 of them. And again, that recipe is 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of raisins, a tablespoon of butter, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you wish to add some nuts, it would be 1/4 cup of nuts added to this recipe. Right, whoops, I dropped it and some of the stuffing came out. Got the last one to go. Here, I'm just going to see if I can shake it in there. That's not working so well. Just getting that all stuffed. Got a little bit of sugar left. There we go. Now we've got them all packed and ready to go. That didn't take any time at all. So again, this would be a nice quick dessert. serve it with a little vanilla ice cream. It's almost like you have a decadent dessert. Okay, last thing we need to do is to put the butter on here. I took a tablespoon of butter and I cut it into fourths. So then you just put that on top. Two more here. And now they're all ready to go in the oven. You do want to cook them at 375 degrees for about 30 to 45 minutes, depending upon the temperature of your oven, how long it cooks things, or until they're cooked well and the top is bubbly and you can tell that the apples are cooked through. So that's our first recipe for baked apples. There are other things you can do with baked apples. You could make savory baked apples. You could put some cheese in there. There are different recipes, but this with the brown sugar and cinnamon and the raisins makes a really nice dessert. So I'm going to put this aside and we're going to move on to our next recipe. The next recipe is going to be that little fun recipe for kids, the little apple snack. I just going to find the picture to show you what they're supposed to look like, and we'll hope that ours turn out. They're supposed to look like mouths with teeth sticking out. It would be perfect for Halloween, or just if you have reluctant eaters, give them something fun to eat for snack time. The ingredients for this is apples. It suggests that you use a red apple, so again, I just used a Cortland. They suggested red simply because it looks more like lips. And you take your apple and you cut it into fourths. So you just take that apple, cut it into fourths like I've done here. And then you cut a little slit on the outside to look like a mouth. So we're going to take our fourth of an apple and we're just going to make a little cut. Kind of a half moon on each side. There you go. So that looks like lips. And then you just take some peanut butter. You could use smooth or crunchy. I'm just going to use some smooth peanut butter. That's what I had on hand. We're going to take that and we're going to put the peanut butter in there. And then we're going to take our slivered almonds. Here's some slivered almonds. And hopefully we're going to make it look like we're putting teeth in there. Well, that one broke on me. I'm going to stick some, put one there. Put about 4 of them on the top. Again, can be creative. I'm going to put 4 there. And we're going to stick some out from the bottom. I will say that these slivered almonds are breaking easily, so you just have to be a little careful when you're getting that put in there. And I imagine, you know, the first one you do won't look as good as the others. So there we've got like a scary mouth. It's just a fourth of an apple. Let's try another one. Let's see how we can do with our next one. Got our peanut butter. Put some peanut butter in there. This is a nice healthy snack, and it doesn't just have to be for kids, it's fun for adults too. We're going to put some more of our slivered almonds on here, make it look scary or a little frightening. There, that one looks kind of cool. I think we're just going to leave it like that. I like that with the just 3 sticking out. That's kind of scary looking. So that's our second recipe, and that's just a fun little quick snack. Kids will love it. The next dessert, which is a really fun dessert to make, especially if, let's say you wanted to make apple pie but you didn't have any pie crust, you can make apple crisp. It's very similar. It just uses a topping of oats and sugar and flour instead of pie crust. So let's get started with that. For that, we need our baking dish. I got our baking dish right here. You will need apples. let's get the recipe. For this you need 6 golden delicious apples. Other varieties can be used. You can either slice them or you can cube them. I always prefer to cube my apples. You need 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 3/4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1 1/2 teaspoons of lemon juice, 1 cup of light brown sugar, 3/4 cups of old-fashioned oats, 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and 1/2 cup of cold unsalted butter diced into small cubes. And you can add a pinch of salt in there if you'd like. So I have my apples already diced up, and I used the Jonathan apples, or the Granny Smith apples. I just used 6 of these. Chop them into squares. So for this recipe, the filling doesn't take as much sugar as the topping does. So the filling consists of the chopped apples, 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Got my 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon here. So I'm going to put that in there. And for sugar, the granulated sugar, all you need is 2 tablespoons of the granulated sugar. So the filling is the 6 apples, the cinnamon, and the granulated sugar. And we just need to mix that up. So the filling part is really easy to do. It's the topping that takes a little longer and can be a little trickier simply because you have to work that butter in with the flour, the brown sugar, and the oats. So once you have everything mixed up, you want to take an 8x8 buttered baking dish, which we have that right here. And then you're just going to put the apples into that baking dish. Put those in there. Again, this smells really good with the cinnamon and the apples. Oh, it's going to be delicious. Get those in our baking dish. That was pretty easy. The next part is a little harder, simply because you have to work the ingredients together. I'm going to set this aside, and we will move on. For the topping, I've got my butter right here. So I've got my dish of butter, and let's read the recipe again. In a mixing bowl, you want to add the brown sugar, the oats, the flour, the cinnamon, and diced cold butter. So I've got my diced cold butter. So into this I need to add 3/4 cup of old-fashioned oats, and I've got those right here. I need my cup of light brown sugar, and I've got my brown sugar here. Add that. It calls for the cinnamon. This calls for a teaspoon of cinnamon, so we'll put the teaspoon of cinnamon in. And last but not least, we will put our flour, 3/4 cup of flour. So the recipe for the topping again is 3/4 cup of flour, 3/4 cup of old-fashioned oats, 1 cup of light brown sugar, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of lemon juice. So we need to add that. That I did not add yet. So let's put the lemon juice in there. Got 1 1/2 of the lemon juice. There we go. Now this is the tricky part, because now you have to work this with your hands, a fork and a knife, or a pastry cutter. I'm going to use my hands. I like to get the feel of the texture. If you do this enough, you kind of know how it's supposed to feel and look. And it doesn't take that long to do. It's a little tricky. My butter's been sitting out a little longer than if I took it right from the refrigerator. So we're just gonna work that. Again, this is another nice dessert recipe if you don't have pie crust, but you're hungry for something like apple pie. And again, there are other variations that you can make with this. You could add nuts to this if you wanted to make it a little nuttier. You could also add raisins for that matter. You can get creative. You don't have to follow the recipe exactly. There's nothing wrong with adding things to it. All right, I think that's mixed up pretty well. I was lucky because, like I said, my butter had softened a little. So let's get our baking dish with our apples. Got those in there. And then we're just going to put our topping on. Just sprinkle that on the top. Make sure you get it covered well. Again, this with the cinnamon in here smells really good. And the oats, I don't know, it adds such a nice crunchy top to this. Sometimes I almost prefer this over apple pie. It has a little more texture. There we go. We got our topping on. And then it says to just pat it down to make sure that all of the edges are covered so that everything gets some of the nice topping on there. And then that's how it looks. And you will bake this uncovered in the oven. And we'll get the recipe so I can tell you exactly how long. 350 degrees, 8 by 8 pan, which is what we used. And it cooks for about 45 minutes. Again, you know, just keep an eye on it. Your oven might cook it faster than that. And when it's brown and bubbly, and then you know that it's ready to go. So those are the 3 recipes that we made today. Real quickly, I will read them all back to you, and then you can get busy and make your own apple desserts. So for the apple crisp, 6 golden delicious apples, or whichever apple you choose to use, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 3/4 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 1/2 teaspoons of lemon juice, 1 cup of light brown sugar, 3/4 cups of old-fashioned oats, 3/4 cups of flour, and 1/2 cup of cold unsalted butter, diced into cubes. And for this recipe, you mix together the apples, the sugar, and the cinnamon. And then for the topping, you add the brown sugar, the oats, the flour, the butter, and the lemon juice, and you put that on top. You could also probably put the lemon juice in with the apples. Either way would work just fine. The other recipe we made were the baked apples. These take 4 apples, wash them up. Recipe for this calls for 1/4 cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 cup of raisins or currants, and a tablespoon of butter. You can also add a 1/4 cup of nuts to it. Walnuts, pecans, either one would work just fine. And put the pad of butter on each top. Take a tablespoon of butter, cut it into 4ths, put it on top of the apples, put that in the oven. Bake 375 for about 30 to 45 minutes, and you have a nice sweet dessert and a healthy dessert. Well, healthier than maybe brownies. The last fun apple snack we made were the little mouths with the apples, peanut butter, and the slivered almonds. This just called for 1 red apple cut into 4ths with cutting a little slit on the outside so it looks like the mouth and the apple looks like the lips. Spread a little peanut butter in the middle, put in your slivered almonds to look like teeth. You got a fun little treat for your children or yourself. Those are the 3 recipes for today. I hope that you enjoyed baking with the apples. And join us next time for our next virtual gardening program. Thank you.